Hi, my name is Sophie Bauman. I'm here with Baltimore Heritage 5-Minute History. I'm going to hand it over to Johns, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I'll be back in a minute to talk about the Hansa House.
Well, clearly this is going to be the best 5-Minute Histories video that we've done so far. Let me explain. I'm Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage. I have known Sophie since the day she was born. We are neighbors around the corner. She is now in high school. Egad, where does the time go? She is also taking a class on local public history, and she has done research on German immigration into Baltimore and Hansa House behind me specifically. So the stars definitely aligned for Sophie to take the lead on this video. Before I turn it back over to her to talk a little bit more about Hansa House, let me just say a few words about its beginnings. It was built by the Savings Bank of Baltimore, its next door neighbor, in 1911, 1912. Not the very first wave of buildings to go up after the 1904 fire, but pretty close. It was still in that rebuilding stage. And the company, and it was built as a rental property, but they had a very particular tenant in mind, and that was the Albert Schumacher company, and they were the agents to the North German Lloyd Steamship Company. We're going to talk about them in a second. And the North German Lloyd folks had a very particular building they wanted. Their lead agent, a gentleman named Paul Hilken, directed the architects to build this timber frame and stucco building, wanting everybody to think of Germany when they walk past it. And if you think of well, this looks like a German commercial building on the Weser River in Bremen, that's exactly what they wanted you to think. In fact, it's actually a copy of a courthouse, and let me make sure I get the name right, the Halberstadt Courthouse in Halberstadt, Germany, not in Bremen, not even in Lower Saxony, but Germany none the same. And this 16th century courthouse was the model for this for Hansa House, but with one wrinkle. The medieval courthouse is cantilevered over the street, and here in Baltimore in 1911, when this building was being put up, the fire marshal was not about to allow that kind of fire hazard to come into a new building just so shortly after the great 1904 fire. But other than that, they look pretty similar. Let me say a word about the North German Lloyd Steamship Company before turning it over to Sophie. They were started in the 1850s, and they were the first company to provide regular service between Baltimore and Europe, both for passengers and for freight. And so lots and lots of folks came over from Germany into Baltimore that way. In fact, they had a pretty neat sort of a package deal. For one price, one ticket, you could get on your boat in Bremen, sail across the Atlantic. If you made it through customs and immigration here in Locust Point in Baltimore, and most of their passengers did, they made sure of that, that same ticket got you on a B&O railroad and got you out to wherever in America you wanted to go. So by the time World War I comes around, cities like St. Louis and Cincinnati and Milwaukee are full of German immigrants who had come through the North German Lloyd Steamship Company with its offices just upstairs here. And in fact, Baltimore, luckily for us, a number of those folks never made it out to the hinterlands, or they chose to stay here initially. So we had the 4th highest number of Germans in the years leading up to World War I. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sophie.
Hilken was not just a steamship agent, but also a German spy. Many plots planned by the Germans took place at the top floor of Hansa House. One of the first being the Black Tom explosion in World War I. The explosion actually took place prior to the U.S. involvement in World War I, so it was one of the first foreign attacks on U.S. soil. It was an explosion that took place in the New York harbor, killing 4 people and damaging the Statue of Liberty. They then later planned a separate explosion in Kingsland, New Jersey, also from the Hansa House, which killed 3 people and was said to be even more dramatic than the first. Paul Hilken was never charged for his crimes and ended up being a wholesale paint salesman in New York City, while Germany did pay for damages caused by the explosions.
Thanks so much, Miss Bauman. Fantastic. Who would have known we had a German spy ring operating here in downtown out of the Hansa House? Let me wrap up with one word before we say thanks and goodbye, and that's about the heraldic crests, the coats of arms that once were around the outside of the building. The building was not only operated by the North German Lloyd folks, for shipping, it was also the Imperial German consulate. So all things German happening here. And in addition to the architecture, they wanted even the decorations on the outside to scream Germany, Germany, Germany. And so they commissioned an artist to paint upwards of 40 heraldic crests from the Hanseatic League. These were cities in Germany that had banded together a couple hundred years ago to promote commerce and fight off pirates. So a great symbol for a company that was also engaged in international commerce. And they decorated the outside to help people know what was going on, that German connection. After World War II, the North German Lloyd folks were no longer here. And the heraldic crests had become so rotted and deteriorated, you could really not even see what was on them. The bank, right after World War II, seriously considered demolishing the building. Luckily for us, they decided not to, and decided to restore it. The only problem was with the heraldic crests, you couldn't tell what was on them, and nobody knew what was there. In comes our deus ex machina in the name of Mrs. Berquist. A woman named Mrs. Berquist happened to have the original plates for the heraldic crests. She called up the bank and said, "They're yours if you want them." The bank said yes, and this time they had them painted on aluminum with extra varnish to withstand the weather. After the bank changed hands, they moved inside, and then they disappeared, and people feared that they were gone. Luckily for us, they weren't. They were just in storage. And today, if you want to see the crests, go to Zion Lutheran Church in their grand hall. They're up there, that German Lutheran church down by City Hall. They're up there now. And I will invite you, put a little tickler in your calendar for late September to start listening for notices of Zion's annual sour beef dinner. We'll hopefully all have the coronavirus vaccine by then. So go down to Zion Lutheran Church, have a fabulous sour beef dinner and a cup of German beer, and then look up and take a look at the heraldic crest from the Hanseatic League that came from the Hansa House. All right, thanks so much, Sophie, and thank you all, and we'll see you next time.